United States. Yeah. So can you do this and just follow?
Okay, yeah.
That you see me and then there. Okay.
I think we're gonna do that whole
Yeah,
okay. If it's just standing there. I can
I know you have a lot going on. You're not going to nationals. Say like we just got in. They had to figure out enough people.
How are you?
They had to figure out enough people to go. And like they I don't even know. And like 5 of the 15 people were babies. I'm like, you're really banking on these 5 people to be able to go.
Emily's in the same biotech class.
She's not gonna go.
Yeah, she's not gonna go.
Yeah, no.
I was like, in her job Sam, she probably might do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I put you down to 12.
No. I found it.
I know, me too.
I said, what is confusing? The EMS one?
Yeah.
Shit, is
I
that?
already started doing
You did? Good. Okay.
already.
I'm talking about like don't take it like I was thinking seriously as you.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm working. You study.
I know, I sent you that text the other day and then I read it again and I was like, wow, that was really like,
It's like, man.
oh no, you're fine. Like forceful.
I was just like,
about
no. I didn't feel like you were forceful. I was just like,
Okay.
everybody texts me like such long reasons not to come to practice. I'm like, okay, thanks for letting me know. Bye.
Oh, I just felt like that.
No. You're different though because like I actually talk to you outside of soccer.
I literally was like, oh, I know it stands for an excuse, but I literally had like 5 minutes.
No, yeah.
On Friday.
No.
And I only fucked up the last round.
You're fine.
So I was like, and that's why I can't go to national club because I really can't.
John probably will remember the student practice, like starting next week, I would definitely say. Like, Thursday, like, how do I defend telling people that they should come if honestly, like, out of personal, like, desire, I want to go and watch a soccer game, so, like, that's what I make in practice. Like, and I forgot, next Thursday we're going to cancel practice because of the homecoming concert.
What time is the notice? Do you know?
Yeah, 6, sorry, I saw that today. I looked at that today, it's 6. It's on Friday. What time's your class till?
My class is till 6:15.
Oh, you'll be fine.
But honestly, I don't really care. And then I was thinking more of work because I have the same shift, but if it's
Yeah, it's 6. It's earlier. No, technically last time I was like, that is good for you. I am doing that.
well, even if I go to my class, I was still happy.
Yeah.
I just want that.
Yeah, I know you do. You probably have. I'll never forget freshman year. I was
It's
walking
gonna be
around
one of those things where it's just having people in the office.
Yeah. And it's not going to be up to me at all. I'm going to be like, I do not like you. I say get the nod.
Hey, I like
that. Yeah, I got it.
I'm very like, you want to dress a certain way?
Welcome. You got your name tag? Put our name tags on.
So if the girl goes out, she's like wearing.
We had a great night tonight. Voice. Text. Okay. So in this case, if you have your name tags, put them up, and let's start. We have a full night tonight. I'll spend some time with you later on in the evening when we finish. There's people that weren't here last time, wanted to see their exams. We'll go through all the exams. I'm going to tell you. But we have an opportunity here. I think one of the, an infamous here attorney that really specializes in blockchain. He's a UM law school grad, plus he's specializing in blockchain. He's basically well known not only in the South Florida community, but in the United States, and he's traveled and he's really done a great job. So what I asked him to do was just to give you a short overview of how blockchain can be used in healthcare. You can ask him any questions, and then we'll start the class, our regular class. Later on at 7:45, we have a new startup that's doing blockchain in healthcare, and she's going to be coming, and what I thought would be interesting is she sent me the slides. I posted her slides on Blackboard, and what's interesting about her slides is basically almost a way in which you can follow for your project. You know, of what is the problem, who are her competitors, how's she going to monetize this. So it's interesting, and she's going to be coming in at 7:45. But in between, Justin Wales, who was so gracious to come into my prior class, I just wanted him to give you just an overview of how you can use blockchain in healthcare, and he can answer some of your questions. Okay?
Yeah, so, hello. Does anyone have a pretty good idea about what blockchain actually is, or what Bitcoin is? Does anyone have Bitcoin?
Here, we have one.
A couple? Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, so you have some Bitcoin?
No, I don't have it.
Okay.
So, Ty, you have?
Yeah, I have a bunch of different alternate currencies as well.
Okay, good. So what I think my goal is, because I only have like 15 or 20 minutes, and there's someone who's pitching you an idea at 7:45. So I want to give you guys the tools you need to figure out, and I don't know the woman at all, of whether her idea is worth anything. Because there are a lot of companies that are trying to raise money, trying to sell you the idea that blockchain is a solution to all of your problems. And it's not. It's a really good solution to a small amount of problems. So, taking a step back, a lot of people talk about Bitcoin as being a virtual currency. That's true, right? Bitcoin with the lowercase b is a virtual currency. But Bitcoin with the uppercase b is the network in which I can send that virtual currency directly to you guys. So I don't have to go through a centralized intermediary to approve that transaction. Instead of me going and sending you money via Visa, which is really me telling Visa that I want to send you money and they're taking a fee, I'm just sending it directly to you online. The rub is that it is using the Bitcoin network to send a Bitcoin lowercase b virtual currency. There's no such thing as a Bitcoin, right? It is just a public ledger in which we all agree that it represents value. And when I want to actually send, what is your name? Ricky? Ricky. When I want to send Ricky $10 in Bitcoin, I'm not sending him anything. I'm just telling all of you guys, okay, I had $20 and he had $0, and I just want you all to like reflect that now I have 10 and he has 10. There's no actual transaction. It's just we're all agreeing as a community that this is how we're going to express value. There's like an interesting theory about like the role that money has traditionally played in society. There's a book by a guy named David Graeber called Debt, the First 5,000 Years, and it's like, if you're interested in currency, it's like really interesting because it traces currency all the way back to when we used shells and salt and feathers, right? We just agree as a community that we're going to say that this represents the abstract idea of value, and Bitcoin is just that latest abstraction. So Bitcoin allows me to send a transaction to Ricky, by just having everyone in this room or everyone in the Bitcoin community agreeing to maintain that ledger. And they maintain that ledger through some complicated math called cryptographic hash functions, but the result, and Sarah can give you the video of me explaining it to the last class, but I'm tired. But the result of it is that you have a ledger that records data that is immutable, meaning you can't change it. It is decentralized, meaning there's not one point of attack. If I want to change the Bitcoin ledger, the Bitcoin network, and let's assume the Bitcoin network is made up of only the people in this class, right, not millions of people all over the world, I need to go and attack 51% of the network. Well, that's very easy if it's just this row of people. I only have to attack, 3 of you. But if it's millions and millions of people in the world, it gets to the point where you just couldn't possibly attack. So a good example of why this is important is like Target, for instance, lost a lot of data. Why did they lose a lot of data? Because they have all of your data in one data center. So if I want to attack and get information about all of Target's clients, I need to go and attack their data center. If you take that data center and you distribute it all over the world to every computer in the world, you can't possibly attack it because there's not one place. You have to have a multi-level attack. So the Bitcoin blockchain is immutable in that regard. There's all sorts of things I can do on it. I can publish things in an immutable way. There are political manifestos. There are MP3s. There are documents. There are pictures. There are images. There are all sorts of things published onto the Bitcoin blockchain. And it's published there in a way that no government, no intermediary can ever tell you to take it down. Well, if you look at like what's happening now with the consolidation of social media, right? There are a lot of viewpoints, expressive viewpoints that are being taken down by Twitter or Facebook because they're deemed not worthy of society. Well, you can take the position, well, that's good. There should be platforms that curate expression. Or you take the idea, there's this philosopher called Alexander Meiklejohn, Meiklejohn, I think. He's a very influential sort of political scientist and free speech advocate. And he puts forth this idea of like the marketplace of ideas theory. We are better off as a society if as many ideas are allowed to be expressed, and then we then decide which actually has value once we are able to encounter them. So blockchain potentially allows you to have data, content, records put out for worldwide consumption without the fear that any intermediary, any centralized figure can tell you, well, that's not worthy of transaction, that's not worthy of expression. As an example, I'll tell you how I first found out about Bitcoin. And I like telling it at UM because it happened at UM. In 2010, I was in the UM Law Review. I was a second year law student, and I'm sitting in the Law Review office writing some paper about the First Amendment, and I had Twitter up. And I was following Julian Assange from WikiLeaks. And does everyone here know what WikiLeaks is? It's a platform where you can basically anonymously put up documents that are, in some cases, sensitive, confidential of government activity. And what happened was the Obama administration was calling WikiLeaks a terrorist organization because they published all of this data about what we were doing in Iraq, these terrible things that we were doing to citizens in Iraq. And as a result of the Obama administration labeling them a terrorist organization, MasterCard and Visa and Bank of America and all of these payment processors says, we're no longer going to allow people to donate money to WikiLeaks. We're not going to facilitate that type of transaction.
We're not going to support it.
We're not going to support it, right? So Julian Assange tweeted out, if you want to donate to WikiLeaks, donate in Bitcoin, and put his address. And I saw that, and I said, what is Bitcoin? And I called a friend of mine who was at MIT at the time, and I said, have you heard of this thing? He's like, oh yeah, some people in like the cryptography, some of my cryptography friends have been talking about it, and I started learning about it like that. And I got into it from this like expressive sort of side of things. So to make a long story short, in order to use the Bitcoin network, you need to have Bitcoin. There are other types of blockchains that purport to do the same or similar types of things, meaning the ability to send data, whether in the form of actual data. There's a company called Storj, S-T-O-R-J, that is a blockchain only meant to store documents. Bitcoin is primarily for this transmission of money through this ledger. Ethereum, which is another blockchain using called Ether, which is to build these smart contracts. So what I'm going to predict what the woman at 745 is going to try to do. And again, I have no idea. But I'm going to predict that what she's going to try to do is transmit medical records using the blockchain in order to save on the cost of transmission that occurs now and the risk that you are losing out on vital medical records because there are so many different centralized systems for transmitting records. Now here's the question I think you guys should ask her. One, what kind of blockchain is she using? Is she using Bitcoin?
They're gonna sound so smart.
You're gonna sound very smart. What kind of blockchain is she using? Bitcoin? If so, how is she building smart contracts onto Bitcoin? It's difficult now, right? It's still a rudimentary network in some ways. Is she using Ethereum? If so, is she building her own token on top of Ethereum? And this is sort of like where we see the majority of companies trying to use blockchain. What they say is, we want an immutable record, we want to have some automatic transmissions of documents or data, so we're going to create a platform, and in order to use our platform, you need to buy our token. This is probably how you made some money last year, right? You bought a bunch of tokens that are purportedly for, has some utility in some platform. Now, this is, okay, I know the answer is no. Have you ever used a token you purchased for anything other than investment? No. And this is the core problem.
That's a great, does everybody understand the question?
So this is,
Yeah.
so this is the core.
This is the crux.
This is the core problem with almost every company that's trying
Yeah.
to operate in this space, is that there's so much money being poured in from investors because blockchain is legitimately interesting, right? It solves a lot of interesting problems. In a second, I know I'm sort of going over the time, but
No,
I'm
it's
having
okay.
fun.
No, I think it's valuable because then
Yeah.
they can be more informed when they hear all these speakers and everybody's selling us
Yeah.
something and everybody wants to get money from this,
Right.
quick and easy.
So if what you're doing is you're trying to solve that problem, and you're requiring me as a user to purchase a proprietary token in order to gain access to your supposedly efficient system, you are adding friction to a system that is meant to be frictionless. So Bitcoin works because it is a base layer protocol, right? In order to access Bitcoin, I need lowercase Bitcoin currency. However, in order to use, here's an example of like the worst idea I've heard. It's a decentralized LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn is a central company. It's just a company that you can go and get a profile for. What this company purports to do is say, there's no central company. We're going to allow all of you to connect to recruiters, one-on-one, peer-to-peer. But in order to do that, you need to have these decentralized LinkedIn tokens. Now, the tokens don't do anything now, but I'll sell them to you at an 80% discount if you buy them right now. And I'll promise you that 6 months from now, they'll be on an exchange and they'll be worth 10 times as much. So you're buying them as an investment. What's some coins you own?
Vertcoin, Siacoin.
Siacoin. Siacoin's interesting. That's like a file sharing coin.
Yeah.
Vertcoin's a scam. What else did you? What else did you own?
It was like a small one called, I own Neo, Stellar,
Stellar?
Tron.
Okay. So a lot of these are sort of platform coins in the same way like Ethereum is. The problem becomes, and if you go back to 51 Crypto,
Let me go to
the problem.
What?
Yeah.
What about Ripple?
Ripple's interesting. Okay, so Ripple's interesting.
Here's
Okay, so
Crypto
just
51.
so just real quick. So remember I told you that Bitcoin spreads the risk to a large number of people of attack, right? There's not a central place for you to attack. You have to attack everyone at once. Well, there are ways to attack multiple people at once, and it basically is me having enough computing power. If you have something called a proof of work algorithm, it's having enough computing power to attack 51% of the network. Now, for Bitcoin, an hour attack cost is 386. It'll basically cost 51 times 386 to attack the Bitcoin network. At that point, you also need hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of hardware and quite a large facility all over the world in order to attack Bitcoin. If you go all the way down, oh, is that Bitcoin?
Which one?
Did I see where? No, it's Bitcoin. Go down?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Did you find it there?
No, but Florin coin, I don't know what this is, but look how cheap it is to attack. So when you're asked, when this person comes in at 7:45, ask her what blockchain she is going to use.
And
ask her
what would probably be her answer? She said, what blockchain are you going to be using?
My guess is that she's going to use an Ethereum. And if she's using Ethereum, my guess is that she might have her own token. Now, the question then becomes, if you're building it on the Ethereum blockchain, why not just allow people to purchase your services with Ethereum? And what do you think the answer is going to be?
She'd probably say no.
Why?
Like,
But why? She has
because
to come
she
up with
wants to
some
start her
idea.
own token
Why?
to make money.
Yes.
But she's not going to say, I want to make money.
Well, she might say, because I want to capitalize. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons. And does anyone here started a company before? No? Okay, so it's difficult to start a company because money is never cheap, right? If I want to go to an investor and I say, listen, I have a really great idea, I need $1 million to start it, they're going to say, okay, show me your business plan. Oh, okay, this is a good idea. I'll give you $1 million, but I want 20% of your company, right? This is Shark Tank. They take something for giving you the money. What crowdsourcing tokens, and there's a lot of reasons why crowdsourcing tokens is a good thing. I know I sort of like shit on it, but there's reasons why it would be sort of it's a good invention for human society. But it leaves no it creates no pressure to actually perform once you get the money. I've seen people who have raised $30 million, $40 million in a day. And once you have $30 million for your company, there is no incentive to build that company, right? If I had $30 million, I would never work again in my life, right? Like there would just be no.
I don't believe that.
Maybe. No, I would. I certainly wouldn't be. I certainly wouldn't be doing it in Miami. I'd be in Europe somewhere. But so people have taken advantage of the system in order to get as much money as quickly as possible, as fast as possible. That being said, the reason why you would have your own token is because you want to incentivize people to secure the network. So, as an example, Bitcoin has a blockchain. The network itself rewards miners. They're called miners, like a gold miner, right? They reward the miners for spending computing power to actually secure the system. This number right here is called a hash rate. That's basically the total computing output of every person who's securing the system. And when I am rewarded, when I successfully validate a block of transactions, the network itself rewards me for making that effort. It's game theory, right? You can't expect someone to do something just out of the goodness of their own heart. The network says, if you are going to validate this transaction on the network, we're going to reward you. So then the question becomes, why do you need a token if it's not to encourage people to validate transactions or data flow on this decentralized network? The third question that I would ask this person.
So the first question is, what kind of blockchain is she using? The second one
is if she is using a token, why is she using a token?
Why?
Why not just use Ether? And then the third question.
Yeah.
Here's actually a good question. The third question is, how do you deal with like HIPAA's restrictions on what can and can't be sent, right? So HIPAA, have you guys learned about HIPAA? This is a healthcare, right?
Yeah.
All right, so HIPAA's insane. And HIPAA was written at a time before we had all of these technological innovations, right? So I can't text you. HIPAA doesn't allow me as a doctor to text my patient, right? Why is that? Because phone numbers are considered private medical information. And again, like I'm not a healthcare lawyer, I just sort of picked up some of these things. But I can use Telegram or I can use messaging apps to get around that. HIPAA doesn't allow you to send cryptographically secure medical records via email. However, there was a time when you couldn't have the level of security that you could have now using cryptography. So I guess the question would be is like, how do you deal from a legal perspective with the implication of putting things on a public blockchain? Because if you're on Bitcoin and you're building something on top of Bitcoin, well, the security risk is that Bitcoin itself gets attacked, and that's very small. But if you're putting it on sort of a layer on top of a smaller blockchain, well, now you have the possibility of putting people's medical records onto something that's immutable and it's public, and there's a relative.
Well, they couldn't, she said, we're not gonna do a public.
Well, okay,
Blockchain.
that's great. Okay, let's say she says, I'm not gonna do a public blockchain, and the question is, well, why do you need a blockchain? Because the reason why you have a blockchain is to distribute the risk to everyone else. So we have, I hear about these things all the time, they're called private blockchains. And what is, Ty, you might know this, what is a private blockchain?
I mean, like, honestly, I don't really know.
It's a
But,
database,
like,
a database. So you attach this sort of like sexy word to like a really boring concept. You're saying, okay, so we're creating a medical record database. Well, every EMR company in the world has a private database. What makes this one, and I'm picking on her, I don't know what her business is, but like what makes
And I wanted to be your client for this one.
but it's like what makes your company special compared to other EMR companies, and how are you taking advantage of this amazing technology that was really created to allow everyone in the community to get around the need for these intermediary or centralized data processors?
So what if she comes back and say, I want to keep, you see a lot of these healthcare startups using blockchain saying, I want to keep my data.
Yeah.
So you, Justin Wales, you want to keep your data, you want to be able to, when you go to another doctor, when you go to California, when you go abroad,
Yeah.
when you go to Europe, you will have your data. And then maybe what they're telling you too is, I want to incentivize you to share your data with me so I can do a genome project.
Sure.
I can do, so how would you respond to that?
Well, I would say this is, I'll respond in two parts. The first is, here's an interesting way that you can do medical records on a blockchain. There's something called ZK Snark. Do you know what this is? Okay. You ever heard of Zcash?
Yeah.
Okay. So ZK Snarks is
So how do you spell that?
ZKSNARKS.
That's what-
It's called zero knowledge proofs, right?
Z.
K Snarks. SNARKS. Okay, so ZK Snarks is a non-interactive zero knowledge proof, right? What it allows me to do through cryptography is demonstrate to you that I have access to data without telling you what the data is, and allows you to verify that the data is something that I had access to without asking me for that data, right? It's sort of, we are both blind, but we are able to verify each other. Well, who owns, okay, let's say you've gone to the doctor recently. Who owns those records? They are your records, but whatever, health,
Yeah,
health.
whatever.
Health group has a file or has a server that has your records on it. They're your records, but they own it. What you could potentially do is you could, through a digital wallet, or you can even put this, and again, I'm pitching you an idea that I'm making up in real time, so just bear with me. But like, you know how people have like those like dog tags that say like,
Right,
you know,
I'm whatever,
or-
and they find me. Right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
have-
like a
and I have all-
cyclists have it, right?
Right, and I have these,
You could have-
allergies.
Yeah, you could
and
have
I'm
a,
diabetic.
you could have a card, or you could have a digital wallet, or you could have like a little necklace that the doctor can scan. And if the doctor has your permission, because he has a private key associated with being your physician, he can have access to those records, but he never actually has those records. And we will know, for instance, every time he transacts those records. Now here's where it gets difficult. If it's the same reason why like you can't really send anything sensitive on like Snapchat, right? Is because if I really wanted to, I could do this. I could take a picture, right? It's hard to really protect medical records because if I really wanted to send them to someone else, I could just make a copy of it somehow and then send that copy. You can't do that with something like Bitcoin because a Bitcoin has no physical manifestation. At some point though, the medical records have to be readable to like a doctor's eyes and they have to be sent. So it becomes difficult to really solve that problem, but that's a pretty good, this is actually, you can get funding. One of you should take this idea, look up C. Hay Snarks and spend a couple hours doing it. Someone will give you money for this idea, I guarantee it. Because you are now allowing someone to own their data and to proprietarily sell you that data. There's a company called, I think it's called Big Token. Look up Big Token. And they're trying,
Big or BI?
BIG, I think, token. They're trying to put personal, it's not medical records, but personal private data onto a blockchain such that you own the data itself and you license it out. Is this it?
It's like claim your data.
Yeah.
The blockchain for consumers to own, verify, and sell their data.
Right. So the idea is that when you go and sign into Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they are taking your data. And then they are monetizing it, right? They are aggregating it and they are selling it. What they're purporting to do is you sign up for an account with Big Token, I guess, and then they will pay you in Big Token as your data is then sold and is sort of spread across and anonymized to various data sectors. So you would just have a little wallet, and as your data is being used by different marketing companies or whatever, you're getting more Big Tokens. There's a lot of problems with like this model, but it's an example of people saying, well, we don't need to have these central companies owning all your data. You can own your own data and just license
it's
it
like,
out.
when you get Google or anywhere else, you're getting Gmail and all their services
Yeah.
because they're making money off of you. They're saying, let me have the data and let me make money off of myself, off my data, and I'll allow you then
Yeah.
to use my data in certain.
Yeah, and I mean, look, there are a lot of maybe cool applications for blockchain in the medical record. She probably has a really good company. Yeah.
I had a question, and I don't know if I'm phrasing this correctly,
Yeah.
but I'm confused in the sense of, say this company comes along that wants to allow me access to my medical records, but Blue Cross already has records,
Yeah.
say UHealth has some of my records, I'm from Michigan, hospitals in Michigan have some of the records. How is this company going to get me those records?
It's very difficult and
It's existing and there's copies already.
it's existing in this copy, so it's difficult. There are two answers. One is that none of you have privacy and you never will, right? You just were born at a time where privacy doesn't exist. So your records are out there, they're being monetized, you can't protect it. The other way is you end up having a system in which all the hospitals in Florida, all the hospitals in Michigan, all agree to move on to this sort of more private system. And then they do as best they can to sort of clean up the mess that they've already existed. But it's a
You'll have
problem.
legacy still.
It's
You'll
very,
never get rid of the
look,
legacy.
it's very difficult, and it's not going to be the hospital systems that require it. It's going to be insurance companies that end up requiring it, and not even insurance companies from like the medical insurance side. It's cybersecurity insurance, right? So I was just in New York, like I don't know, it's been world last Friday, and I was talking to a very large insurance company about how they're structuring and how they're thinking about cybersecurity in the age of blockchain, because people are coming and say, well, we want to buy these insurance policies because we're starting some blockchain company that's using some token. They're trying to figure out, well, how do you actually assess the risk? Well, you assess the risk by figuring out how wide the network is and how decentralized the central points of attack are. So it becomes really difficult with things like insurance companies and things like medical records because they are necessarily and in some degrees importantly centralized, right? Like you wouldn't want, for instance, here's a good example. Every transaction that has ever occurred or will ever occur is on Bitcoin. Is available on, I think, blockchain.info. If you go there right now, you can go and see every transaction that has ever occurred. You can link it back to like the time that that specific Bitcoin was mined. So I can go, in fact, I just wrote an article where I cited the very first transaction in like a footnote. So blockchain.info.
That info, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Info.
Yeah.
I don't know where you are now. Well, you want that type of data to be public and accessible and open because you want to make sure that the ledger in which your money's on is authentic. However, you wouldn't necessarily want all of your medical records to be that accessible. Now, you can do things like you can not have the actual medical records. You can just have something like a hash of the record, so it's anonymized. But hospitals and insurance companies aren't so comfortable with that, at least not now, because it's still like a relatively new industry, it's still a relatively new technology, and in my mind, it makes very little sense to have any sort of blockchain-based company that doesn't have this incentivized token, and there's not a reason to have 10,000 tokens like Tide has purchased. Any questions about any of this? I know I sort of have been rambling quite a bit.
Any other questions? Well, what is this? Let me just ask you on this one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So these
what are
are
we
so
looking at?
okay. So a block of Bitcoin is mined every 10 minutes. Every time a block is mined, the miner who ends up validating it gets a reward of new Bitcoins. That's how new Bitcoins are created. It's a deflationary asset, so there's only ever going to be 21 million. So this is saying it's about every 10 minutes. So this is saying the latest block. So if you click on this, oh, actually, hold on, wait. This is interesting. These are how many different transactions were mined in each block. Okay, so 3 minutes ago, 3,095 transactions in Bitcoin were mined. 12 minutes ago, in this block, 3426. Let's put this 10-minute one. Let's click there. So now it'll take me inside the block, 49 transactions. The total output is 113 Bitcoin, which is what, 113 times about $7,000, right? Antpool is a large Bitcoin mining company, so they were given 12.5 Bitcoin for mining this block. So they were given 12.5 Bitcoin times $7,000-ish.
Yeah.
And there's a way of go down. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is great. Okay, so these are the actual transactions. So what does this mean? This means that here, stop. Actually, go down to the next one. Go down to this one. All right. This means that this address sent to this address 0.0051948 Bitcoin. Now, this is powerful because now I know, everyone in the entire Bitcoin community knows that this address, and whoever owns it, who knows, has less Bitcoin than they did before. It's completely open. I can verify. If Ty told me that he had 100 Bitcoin, right? He would have, what, $700,000. If he told me that, I would say, okay, show me your wallet address. You don't have to show me anything personal about it, but you can actually verify how many Bitcoin you have. And that becomes super powerful in terms of making loans, checking creditworthiness. It becomes really powerful in terms of verifying identity, potentially. Because let's say again, I'm picking on Ty because he has a bunch of shit coins. But let's say that Ty had had wanted to demonstrate that he was who he said he was, and that he was actually this person, and that this person is, you know, Satoshi Nakamoto, who created Bitcoin, and we don't know who he is. All he would have to do was to say, okay, from this transaction, which we know is Satoshi, he would only have to send 0.000000001 Bitcoin in order to demonstrate that he had control of this. Well, that's called proof of existence, right? That's a powerful tool. So here's something interesting. Do you know, like when you're in like old movies, like someone would hold up a newspaper to show the date,
like a
right?
hostage.
A hostage would show the date. Well, you can actually prove existence, and you can timestamp documents for essentially free, and have it available and verifiable all over the world. So here's actually like an interesting example of like how that was recently used. There was an account called like FIFA. It was on Twitter called like, you know, FIFA is a fraud or something like that. And the idea was that FIFA, the World Soccer, World Cup soccer tournament, is all fixed. FIFA's a big scam. So what happened was this account tweeted every single possible outcome of every match onto Twitter. Germany's going to win 5-4. So and so's going to score. Germany's going to lose 4-2. So and so's going to score. Thousands of different variations. And then as soon as the tournament ended, he deleted all of the ones that weren't true and said, "Look, I predicted this. I knew it was a scam." Well, that's something you couldn't possibly do here, because if you go and you predict that Germany's going to win 5-4 and you write it in here, there's no way of you deleting it. These may seem like frivolous sort of examples, and most technology is at first used for like frivolity. But there's applications of these in
Well,
like
couldn't it be used, you can see it in Miami all the time, all those people that are saying, I'm a Harvard grad.
Oh, yeah, that's actually true. In fact,
Every criminal is a Harvard grad.
they often run for office.
Right.
Yeah, there was a woman named Dee Dee Whitehorn who was just running for. Do you know about this story? She claimed to have been got her CPA degree from MIT, and then someone called up MIT and was like, "Do you know who this woman is?" And they're like, "No, we never heard of her." And her excuse was, I don't know, maybe MIT lost track of the records because like MIT's not good at holding onto records, right? I believe that for some other schools maybe. But here's another example. My father, and depending on like how you react to the story, it sort of tells you a lot. But like, my father grew up in Ocala, and he ended up going to the Army, and then when he got out of the Army, he wanted to get a job. And between the time of when he left his home and got out of the Army, a college in Ocala burned down, and all of their records burned down with it. So what did my dad do?
He said he went to Ocala.
He said he went to this college, and it was on his resume for like 40 years, right? Because like how are you gonna prove it? Well, now I could actually take a hash of my law degree, and can then go put it on a public blockchain, and now when on my resume I could have a little QR code, and you can scan that QR code and be taken to a database that demonstrates that.
Well, they wanted to do that with, I met a company, they wanted to get involved. They were gonna be like the LinkedIn with Microsoft, since Microsoft now owns LinkedIn. So when you put things on LinkedIn
you
saying that you're a Harvard grad,
Yeah.
then they will have like a certification saying, yes, this was certified.
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think there's actually a reason why you would want that sort of thing.
Right.
In some ways, like it's probably good to, it's a little more fun to be able to fudge some things, I guess. But there's reasons why you would want to make sure that the person is who they say they are. Yeah.
Since currently, like, most of the data is centralized for these companies,
Yeah.
universities, they would have to theoretically agree to, like, allow these transactions to happen.
Yeah.
And what would be their incentive to do so?
Well, the incentive would be that you could get rid of a lot of the inefficiencies of like. I mean, think about
Their
how,
registrar wouldn't have to be calling, and you wouldn't have to be sending all those envelopes saying, verify that I'm the transcript, verify that he really was number 2 in his class,
yeah.
right? And
So there's that. It's interesting when you get to something like colleges, because as I said before, it doesn't make sense necessarily for like my personal company to have a blockchain because there's not enough people in my company. It's still centralized. It's just a centralized blockchain. However, it might also not make sense for like University of Miami to have a blockchain because it's still pretty centralized. But maybe they don't need to join Bitcoin. Maybe there doesn't need to be millions of people, sort of making up community validators. Maybe what they could do is they could have a blockchain that is made up of all of the accredited universities in the country.
Or in the world,
Or in the world, right? So
a consortium.
a consortium. So that's often called a federated blockchain. I've heard proposals for like hospital systems, like Jackson and Baptist and these type of things, would all sort of share a database. None of them would have access to like the actual records of the other, but they're using their sort of combined powers to validate each other's. I think that's pretty interesting. You're seeing a lot of like insurance companies also look at stuff like that. But I mean, my position about it is, if it's not open and it's not public and it's not decentralized, then you're just creating a database, and that's boring, right? Like that's not fun. I want like a revolutionary technology. I don't want a cool database. But maybe that's just me. Any other questions?
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you staying.
Yeah.
I wrote the minutes. You were supposed to be for the first class, but it was just so interesting in terms of the healthcare. And we'll take your questions to know.
Yeah.
And then if she needs help, I'll tell her that
I'll let
she
you.
doesn't attorney.
I'll let you guys better for me.
Right, it's a little better if she'll be a good client. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Again, thank you.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or anything, she can give you my
Justin
contact.
Wales. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just didn't, it was just so, he was here, so I thought it would be interesting. He's probably one of the, I'd say, one of the most well-known people in this blockchain area in Miami and really throughout the world, throughout the United States. Okay, folks, what's next? So we have a half hour to spend, and let's start with Blackboard. Any questions? Did somebody take the quizzes? Did people take a quiz from the chapter? Was there issues? No? Good. Okay, so it's good we have this. Let's do this. Let me just go back to Blackboard and we'll see how everybody's doing and we can get started. Okay, so I have 450 audit area. Let's see what we have in terms of our groups, course documents. And Roy, Emmy, and Emma, how are you guys?
We're kind of still discussing our thing, but we have an idea.
What's the idea? Did you upload anything or it's?
No, not yet.
So what's the idea?
I was like, now.
Well, so it's too like unrealistic, but
It's
so
too
we're
unrealistic or realistic?
no unrealistic. So we're trying to think of something.
Okay, so if it's too unrealistic, so let's talk at the end here on it. Okay, Terry, Nico, and Ty, what's up?
I wasn't sure what to.
And what about with the rest of your group?
Yeah, we were just waiting for him to like sort of figure out.
You're what?
We were waiting for him so we could just have one idea and not have to like.
Okay, so when are you gonna do that? So let's do it today.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Wait, can you explain like what the project was for? Sorry.
Okay, Lauren, Fiona, and Daniel, what's up? We here? Folks, you wanna talk to each other? What is yours?
For now, we went with what I said last week, it was a location, open navigation system. So we still have to think about it further, but just kind of have it like a system to make healthcare decisions easier and like have it more like culturally.
Okay, so I'll answer with Ty's question by answering with yours as well. Okay, I need a eraser. And is this good, are the Chelsea and Gabby, are the phones in the proper position here? We've had, right? Okay, all right. So what we need to do is we need to think about healthcare. And in healthcare, what I want you to do is think about a problem that needs to be solved. What is the situation now? Meaning, what's the competition? What are people doing to solve it now? And basically, how do you propose to do it different or better, to do it better? And based on this, what I want in terms of your problem is that everybody in the class will be doing a website and possibility and app. We'll be doing all of this without programming. So we'll be using website development that we don't need to be programming. We'll be doing an app that we don't need to be doing it. So if I take their proposal, is a proposal, they're trying to say, the problem is patients are what? Getting lost in the system, that need to be handheld. They almost need to have a concierge way in which, in which if I have I've gotten someone tell me that I have a disease or what? What's a scenario then, Lauren?
I was thinking more, just from my own experience, like along the lines of like what, like insurance policies, or just like what, you know, if like, let's say you go to the doctor and you're diagnosed with a condition, you
Right.
know how to deal with it, like what's essential. I don't know. We have to think about it further.
So you have to think about the problem. Is the problem that I don't know what my insurance is gonna be covering? Is the problem I don't know what my employer is covering? I don't know, I need some mental health counseling. Another one is that we can do. Let me go back. Let's see. Let me go back one more. Okay, Faith and Lorna. So what do you got? Faith, what's going on?
So our idea was to have an app for veterans that provides them like access to mental health services. They can have like a personal coach that they can set like FaceTime sessions with that are reoccurring or for like emergency situations.
And you want to do with veterans?
Mhm.
You want to concentrate. So the problem is veterans basically have a hard time getting, so what would the problem be stated? The veterans are having a hard time getting proper services for mental health conditions.
Yeah, that are convenient to them.
Convenience, so the problem is that they have to make appointments, that it's too far away, that it may be that the waiting time is too, that I have to wait too long to get it, and by that time, a horrible situation can occur, from depression to suicide to other issues that I'm not getting addressed, my mental health needs, and maybe in the family. So that would be my problem, and what now is being done?
Right now, so all veterans can only get healthcare services from the VA, and the VA just has like a hotline that they can call if they need continued like mental health care. They can make appointments, but they're often really backed up. With
And
long
your
wait
app would do
times.
what? Your app would actually give them
Access to.
to a mental health, like telemedicine
Mm-hmm.
on the phone. So one, it could be telemedicine. Another one would be maybe even a group of peer-to-peer that have a number of different vets that have the same conditions, and this is how I got through it.
And it would include like meditation videos or strategies and other like things.
Okay,
that
and so there'll be other places, and there can be even in group therapy. And maybe a couple of people could actually be in a group physically and others could join maybe virtually. And maybe in terms of HIPAA and other requirements, is I wouldn't have to show my face, and even if I were, maybe I would even change my voice content, okay? And these are the ways in which you would propose to make it better. So in that essence, you can then show on your website what you're proposing. You can have your team there, of exposing your team, of who's on the team, what are your ways, and then we could create then a prototype of your app. Does that help time when you're thinking about it? So you can think about in that way when in Faith's group already that she's looking at them. You got it? And it should be something that you're interested in, and it should be something that it's not like what Emma was saying, that it's fantasy world, and then somebody else was telling me, do I have to create an AI, artificial intelligence app? But it may be that you're reviewing what's available, and then you're adding new features to it. But that somebody can come and actually think to yourself, when you're doing it, just like we'll have this at 7:45, basically starting with a company saying, this is what I propose, and we can get even funding. But it will be around somewhere of filling a need with healthcare. Now, it can be in terms of healthcare, it could be that you're going to be looking at, you can then propose something with blockchain or something with coins or something with tokens that you're saying, I'm going to incentivize people with those healthcare. So you can look with healthcare and blockchain. As what are people doing in terms of healthcare and blockchain and tokens? And you can review that and see what people are doing, and then you can propose something that's similar to that you can do better from that. So now with your background tied with the tokens and the coins, you may want to do something that's of interest to you, of creating something on that.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
You understand? That it's exciting for you. I don't want you to do a project. But I'm even emphasizing that more, that I wanted everybody to have a project that you're excited about, and that you'll do even more work on it. And when you leave this class, then when you get your yacht, you'll name it on my name, okay? And you don't even have to bring me onto your yacht. You just put a little Rush's yacht on the side. So we remember Rush. Something like that, okay? That's the only thing that I require, okay? And all the money that you raise, you just wave on the yacht to me, right? We put it on Instagram or something, okay? Great, all right. But probably not, you'll have your own blockchain, right, that is immutable, that you can't make stories up.
I'll put it on my website.
Okay, we'll do it, okay. So is Kayla here? John, okay, so what's up? Not good, okay. All right, Gabrielle, Kelly, and Daniel.
Yeah, we have a project proposal in there.
Okay, so what is it?
It's what we talked about the last class, the substance abuse app type of thing, some creative name there, but like the problem is like when people go to things like AA meetings and stuff, like they're only able to meet with people in their community, and they also might not be able to get there depending on like certain reasons, like if they have a DUI or something like that. So this will be like a platform where they could create a profile and like meet with each other online, have the option to like meet in person if they create like.
And you want to do an app, or how are you?
I think like for the rest of the stuff, it makes more sense to do an app, because like then you could provide like locations of in-person meetings for different things, and then you could like have resources and like treatment centers and like all those resources, a hotline, stuff like that.
Okay, so you're on the same. So what I would want you to do already, everybody, you want to put in your notes then, your proposal needs to be printed out for next week. I sign off on it. I'm in everybody's group, so I sign off that we agree that this is what we're going to do. And then what I want you to do is every week will be like what we call agile development. What's agile development? Everybody hear what I said? Right. And then you got to tell me, not sit there. So what's agile development? We're going to look at this project in what we call agile development.
Thank you.
Like testing, development, like a cycle.
It's agile development is taking, rather than we have an entire project, the way they're doing It used to be when they did anything in information system, information technology, they took an entire project and we took like a year, 6 months, and by the time we finished the year in 6 months, we come back to Yami and guess what? Either she told us this is what she wanted, and then 6 months later, she said, that's not what I proposed, right? Number two, it's like, well, our needs have changed, now our department isn't even our department. And number three, Yami's no longer working there, and everybody else forgot about that project. Sound familiar? So what agile development is, that every week, or every time we meet, we're gonna have a small task that we're gonna do, and then we're gonna check if that task is being run. So we'll go through, we'll say, what's the problem we have now? Have we met those goals? And we're gonna do a new task to it. So we're gonna go step by step. So one of the things that people are saying, I haven't done anything, that ain't gonna work now from the next weeks. You will be graded not well if you haven't met your task for the following week. These times we had spring break and so forth, but the play is over. So in this case, we need to have that task done that we can say, what are we gonna do for next week, and get it, and then assign different tasks to them, and make sure, and we'll document every week who was assigned to a certain task, and find out why that person didn't do that task, and what are the problems in the rest of the group trying to help, and what are the issues. So in that case then, for next week, I need to sign off, and every week then, afterwards, we'll start doing the websites, we'll look at the competitions, we'll see what we have for the end solution. Everybody with me? So this way, at the last week of class, when you're doing your presentations, we should be basically finished. I'll give you then, that way we're not gonna be saying, and by that time in the last week, I'll tell you if this is an A project. And I'll tell you, these are the improvements that need to be done. You have that choice. Rather than giving you a grade, and then you can say after it's done, had I known you needed that, we would have done it. Or you may choose, hey, a C is good enough for us. That's all we want. But from this class, I don't think that most people will want to go that way. But this is the case. And again, I want to emphasize that it's for you. The project is for you, that you can take it along and say, hey, I'm doing something on basically what's happening, and you can see this whole industry here of healthcare needs to make it more efficient and better health outcomes for us. It's a no-brainer, and why not use technology to help us do that? Okay, so we're very good, excellent in terms of we're on the road for it, and we can get some solutions there. And another part of this is looking what's available and taking some of those things available. Nothing's just invented in the blue. Everything is kind of like a step from making it better, right? And executing it better. Think about Apple. You know, Apple's phone, other people had phones before, but it's the idea of the execution that made it so good. Okay, so Faith I've done then. And then, what did we end up doing? So what group am I in now?
You're on 7.
7. So Cindy, James, Avia, and Felipe, what's up?
So what we're gonna do is pretty much a website where you can have reviews. It's really targeted to the everyday person who doesn't really know much about technology or about Internet of Things and how.
So what's the problem?
So the problem is that the consumer doesn't know what's best for him or herself.
To do what?
Because there's so much information out there to buy the best product for healthcare inside their homes. So there's like a up and coming information based on, you know, like even refrigerators or anything that's integrating technology at the home with healthcare. So what we're trying to do is to really make it a user-friendly experience so that, kind of like Consumer Reports, but specifically for that target audience, looking to improve and upgrade their homes and with.
So this is like a humongous number of areas, right? It's like, I mean, are we talking like baby monitors to tell if the heart rate of my young baby to if I have someone that has cancer, or I have the elderly at home.
Right, we would start off with, health products only,
Okay, so we're gonna I
but it
would,
has to be even more narrow than that.
no, but I would just start off with looking at where is it most similar, what is the competition? You basically wanna be like a resource for,
For- yeah.
Companies, because there's a lot of technology coming out, looking at safety and security and monitoring like patient falls, and so there's a lot of.
so I
technology
would
out
do
there.
like different, maybe focus in the beginning, like, how many people in your group? You're 4? It's right here, right? 4 is maybe even focus in 4 areas in the beginning.
Okay,
You know what I mean? Start, and then you say later on,
we'll expand.
we'll expand to other areas and you can outsource even to things, you know what I mean? So maybe there'll be a part on what is like, or what are the latest trends, so something like that Moby News that we saw before, but it'd be maybe broken up into, I'm just thinking in the beginning of different areas, and then there'll be like evaluations and comparisons. I don't want you just to agree with me, but I'm just thinking that you don't, that if it's all just IoT and healthcare, it's, maybe we gotta bring it, I don't know, we can say IoT and healthcare, but then maybe break them down in the beginning, and then later on you say, we'll expand to other areas. So get somehow, you'll get content and depth in some areas, and then you say, these are additional areas that we'll do. And then maybe there'll be some, then you can think about even like a personal app or something that you create. You know, that somebody can do it with, based on, and then you can even take like one area of creating like a prototype of a personal app. You can think about those together, of creating a personal app on healthcare on one of those, and then have it over. And then you get out.
The program like Goodreads that reviews books or
Yeah.
something that I was understanding is to create that type of platform.
Yeah, right. And then you can have other people, and then create a way in which you get other vendors and users to evaluate. So it may be vendors will contribute to you their IoT devices, and then you have your group of certified people, almost like a demo lab, trying it out. So I think it'd be almost good like the health demo lab. You know, as a section of it, you know, and you can start off with at different universities, so you have reputable people throughout, and then you have like just students contributing.
Instead of just, cause I'm reflecting on what you were saying, just before I forget.
Yeah.
You know how you're saying that we should, narrow it down to specific, maybe sector of healthcare? Could we also limit it or narrow it down to like just maybe wearables perhaps?
Yeah. I think, you know what I mean, because it's so broad.
Right.
Like I'm invited to go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas every year, you know, for evaluation for a number of companies having. And they have literally in a convention center, an area of healthcare wearables, you know, that you can make, you know, the Miami Convention Center, if you took that whole Miami Convention Center, that's too small for just this area of healthcare, again, you know, from you know, the smart toothbrush, you know, to having a camera to look at your teeth, you know what I mean? To all these wearables, to you know, everything is a wearable for everything. So you may want to even emphasize, I'm going to do, you know, these wearables in the healthcare, because that's a really huge business, and a lot of it will fade out. But some might be too, the idea of bands, you know, for meditation, to all these, you know, for EKG, to the heart, and to soothe me and all that. So I would focus in that area and have it, but I would even have a section here where it would be really of evaluation. Of it being, almost like, you know how Consumers Reports, they have like a lab, it's almost like have a demo lab, and then you could even outsource, if your idea here is I could outsource, then getting vendors to contribute, and then we could send it out to our various demo labs in, you know, universities or something, something that has some credibility. Because a lot of these times when people are evaluating, a lot of times, you know, they get paid for it.
Right.
You know, I pay you $1,000, what are you gonna say about my product, right? So you can say that, you know, we are independent, you know, getting funds from others, and something like that. How does that sound? So I would narrow it down in that area. Okay, what's next? 7A, William, Daniela, and Yami, what's up?
Here,
But-
but everybody had like kind of different interests, so
Yeah.
I think we're doing different projects.
Okay, so what are you gonna do?
My particular one is healthcare pricing to make pricing more transparent. So kind of like a price line where the patients can put their zip codes and the procedure or the CPT that they're looking to get pricing, and it could bring back the value for different healthcare organizations.
Okay, now how's that, have you seen a like WLRN or are they doing something with transparency?
No,
Okay, basically, you know, I guess, Public Station NPR for South Florida, they had a transparency saying to everybody on the radio, I heard it, that give us how much you pay for certain procedures, and we'll put in the database, and we'll try to make it transparent. So you wanna go to something like that with transparent databases to allow,
patients to shop around and
well, sometimes they can't, and at least to start getting, that transparency, so you should see already adding on to what's trying to be of transparent pricing. Okay, and the rest of your group is not here? I don't see William. Okay. All right. Okay, Sean, Deb, and Isaiah, what's up?
So we have an idea, but we didn't write a proposal. So
Okay,
but our
what's the
idea,
idea?
So our idea is, so Medicare Advantage plans, there isn't a central marketplace where patients can compare each plan. So we're gonna try to develop a website or an app that utilizes the different premium, we look at different factors such as premium deductibles, co-pays, but we're gonna look at it based on your own conditions. So say for example, I have diabetes,
Right.
I have a chronic condition, or a chronic kidney disease, I can compare maybe a straight Medicare versus a Medicare Advantage plan for dialysis.
Okay, so you should check, the first thing that you wanna do is put up, try to start putting it up for tonight, writing it up.
Right.
That you wanna do, what is the problem, as you can see that it's so confusing, all these, and then look at what is being done out there to try to solve those problems, review those, and then add on to what's already available.
Okay.
Okay, and I would start off with a website anyways, because the website, then you could describe what the problem is, what is being done there, you could even give links to what is being done there, what you propose to do, and then you could have your team on your website, and then you could have a portion there of a sample of having your app.
Yeah.
Then you could have an app. I think it's good. Okay, so let me go back, so you can even start writing it up now, you know, in terms of it, so we can at least have it. Okay, so we have, group 8, group 9, group 10. Liz, Kyle, and Monica, what's up?
So we are approaching it, the growing aging population in the United States and how a lot of healthcare spending goes to them receiving care outside of their homes. And so the problem is that they feel forced that they can't stay in their homes, and so we want to make it more accessible for them to stay in home and still receive access to care. And so like there's the Life Alert that they can wear around their neck, but they don't have an application, so we're thinking of doing an application or website that they can have like easy access to contacting their doctors, caretakers, homemakers, nurses, and also being able to schedule visits, and also including the part where their like prescriptions will be reminded for when to take them and refills.
So you wanna create an app, or you wanna create a?
I think an app would be most effective.
Okay, so put it in, we'll do it in the website first of describing it, and then we'll do the app of it. And then you wanna look at what's available now, because there's a lot of apps, you know, I fell down, and you wanna also, I fell down too, kind of thing, or no?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, well, there's some that, you know, I fell, even with my watch now, with the new Apple Watch, if I fall, it will
Do you
alert.
need life alert? Like
Yeah,
the
there's a
commercials
light.
are like I've fallen.
Yeah, I've fallen, but there's now even on the phone, there's now even on the shoes. You can buy shoes, and it will tell me then if I flipped over and then call. There's now even on my Apple Watch now, and they even have it on the, you know, Android watches where when I fall, it will then call a certain number. So you can even combine it of what wearables. It's similar to James's group there in terms of, you know, the wearables and so forth. So find out what, and it may be like it, you can think about it as integration.
Okay.
And then as, what you need to think about too, is this is always gonna change. So a way in which this will be updated all the time. You know, from what it is last year versus what it is 6 months from now, going to be in a way in which you can upgrade it. Okay? And then put that out. So it should be written as, what's the problem, right? You should have ready for next week, what is the competition, how you're gonna be better, and how you're gonna approach it. And then I'll sign off. Okay, so we finish this one. So, let's go back to course documents. I think this is important so we can continue on to it. Okay, so we got, okay, group 11. So what do we got here? The last and final, okay?
We were looking through this, we have ideas, a few. As I told you earlier, we're just looking through to see which one we like.
Okay.
That idea, I told you the chat boxes things, but they kind of, while you were going over their groups, I've kind of just been typing up ideas for it. But
Okay.
now we can see which ones you like.
Okay, so who's in your group? Okay, so we need to conclude tonight. That's what I would do. Just conclude tonight. So what's your idea with the chat box?
Oh, so I was looking through when we were talking earlier, how using Google Duplex and the chat boxes to come up with ideas. I was also thinking, I don't know if you've heard of Google Lens.
Yeah.
I was thinking something similar to that, where you can like, for instance, I have this burn on my finger. I feel like I could create, you could create an app where like you can take a picture of it.
Right.
It'll scan kind of Google Lens style where you look at it, it'll ask questions based on what it sees. And like say, has the skin healed, does it feel different? And by the end of its questioning, it can use Google Duplex to say, oh, it looks like the aftermath of a 3rd-degree burn. The skin is healed perfectly.
Well, you know what I mean, be good is that after that it comes and then it can connect you to the
Yeah, I was thinking
dermatologist, and then they could do the beginning parts of it, and then confirm what you have.
Yeah, I was
So
thinking
it's the pre one, so instead of spending 15 minutes with the dermatologist, I have it limited, and it will only be maybe 3 minutes with the dermatologist to forecast it, and then start changing with the chat, start
Yeah, I was thinking like, for
limiting
instance,
them.
this, it's gonna say like, no action is
Required,
required, allow
right.
the skin to
Right,
heal.
right, right.
melanin
And
will
see,
come
and then
naturally.
another
And
day
then it
or something,
says,
right.
if action is required.
Or that looks like a carcinoma.
Yeah, like if it looks like it was burned and the skin hasn't fully healed, we'll get in contact with the dermatologist. If it looks like it's been infected, we'll get in contact with your primary care physician. You can connect through your thing. I was thinking something like that, because like I have Google Lens on my phone and I see it can do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, something like that. But go ahead and see healthcare applications for those types of things, in shorting the time.
WebMD has a version, but it doesn't use pictures.
Well, that's what you can do, is you can even do in the beginning of create even on the website of what it can do.
Yeah, because my phone came pre-equipped with
Yeah, she had told her to
WebMD.
come in. Oh, wow, hi, hola, how are you? Come in. Wow, the whole crew, wow. Wow, good to see you. Wow, good to see you. Nice to see you. You wanna, we're waiting for another PhD. She's gonna be doing a you're great. They're doing a blockchain startup.
Okay, yeah.
It's called, it's a CYNED. Patty, you know Patricia?
I don't think we know.
So maybe a potential client for you guys. Okay. We just had, Justin was here, Wales.
Great.
He gave us, and we'll wait, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Introduce yourself, tell them what you're doing. And this is a healthcare, I'm glad that you could come. This is a health informatics, health IT group. They're excellent. They are a combination of health sector management, business students, finance, pre-med, and health sciences. So what they're doing is, and it was like timing, wasn't it? It was great timing.
Yeah, we just finished talking.
We're just talking. They're doing projects, and basically thinking about what's lacking in healthcare in terms of technology, and they're doing some applications. And some are also looking at healthcare using blockchain.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Great.
And so you can basically give an introduction to yourselves, what you're doing. You're basically kind of the leading edge in terms of technology and law, and then Patty's supposed to, when she comes, let her in, she's supposed to be coming any minute now, giving a presentation on her new startup using blockchain, and she's a PhD works at FIU in the biosciences area.
Great. Well, Professor, thank you so much for having us, and it's great to meet all of you. I'm Daniel Stabile.
Kimberly Fryer.
We are both attorneys at the law firm of Schutz & Bowen, based here in
And then might
Miami.
as well bring up your, how can I find you?
You can Google Kim Pryor.
Okay. You give it to her first, huh?
Kim Pryor, Schutz & Bowen.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll
Kimberly.
see a nice picture of Kim.
Oh, okay.
I can do it, Kimberly.
With biographical.
Kim what?
Kimberly.
Kimberly.
Uh-huh.
Oh, we're formal. Kimber. Can I do it?
Kimber.
Kimber. Ly.
And then
Prior. Prior.
Yeah, just
Okay.
first one.
First one.
So yes,
Wow,
that's
very
it.
nice picture.
Thank you. It is Photoshop. Although not as much as I asked them to do. They wouldn't do as much as I asked.
They have their limits.
I did actually ask if they bring in even more professional photographers. They said no.
So they said
anyways.
Photoshop is all we
Yes.
can do. Okay.
So anyways, I am a partner in the financial services group at Schutz & Bowen, and so my practice focuses on regulatory issues that banks face, brokers, investment advisors, private equity funds, and in the past, let's say 4 years, my practice has focused a lot in the fintech space, and more specifically in the virtual currency and blockchain space. So I represent clients that have, in this space, I represent clients that have unique business ideas that aren't necessarily like traditional financial services. So people that have like lending platforms, a way to do loans, but you're not getting your loan through a traditional bank, or virtual currency issuers, and clients like that.
So I'm
So
also,
we gotta see your face, no?
well, you can do the same. You can Google Daniel Stabile,
Okay,
S-T-A-B-I-L-E.
hold on, we gotta see are you Photoshopped too? Okay.
I hope so. You guys will tell me.
Okay, Daniel, how do you spell your last name?
S-T-A-B-I-L-E.
Okay.
Yep, that's the one. So
wow.
I think a little, maybe not enough. So I'm also a partner at Schutz & Bowen. My background is in disputes and litigation, going to court, that sort of side of lawyering. I'm also a partner in the financial services group, and I focus there almost exclusively in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. So Bitcoin ATM companies, you might see around, we represent them. We represent issuers of virtual currencies. I overlap a lot with what Kim does, and she and I.
So how, you work on the same cases, or you specialize in different ways?
Often we do.
Yeah, so the way we started working together actually is I had a bank client that through an internal investigation, we found that there was some wrongdoing on the part of some employees that triggered a bunch of violations of US and potentially foreign regulations and laws. So I started working with Daniel on the investigation because all those investigations usually lead to some sort of action by the SEC or the Federal Reserve, or if it's egregious enough, then the Department of Justice will come in. So that's where we intersect with our practices on the very traditional part of our practice. With respect to virtual currency and blockchain, we've been doing pretty much the same thing. So we side by side represent issuers in ICOs, we represent, like you said, Bitcoin ATM companies, we represent, we have a lot of clients that are advising on ICOs and are doing like ancillary services to the blockchain. And so we analyze the services they're providing to see if they need to be licensed in any states.
Give some example, what does that even mean?
So-
Ancillary services.
Right, so we have a particular client that is advising clients who want to offer security tokens. So a security token it's kind of like a stock or an equity in a company, except that equity may not, or that token may not represent a pure ownership interest in the company. Like a traditional stock, if you buy IBM or something, you're buying a fractional share of that company, and that entitles you to profits of that company. A token, you can be more creative. You can entitle them, you can give the holder other rights, you can give them ownership in the company as well, but you may give them something else too, or special preferential rights. And this client in particular is only focusing on tokens that are backed by some sort of asset, and that's why they call it a security token. And so they provide advice to issuers of these tokens about, how they should structure their offering. And that includes everything, like how do you market it? Where do you market it? How do you price it? Like, do you need to be, which laws do you need to comply with? Which investors should you be reaching out to? And all of those questions implicate some sort of, it may implicate some sort of regulation or requirement that requires licensure. So we're working with that company, and throughout their life cycle, they've come up with new and different ways to service this industry. And then we look at each discrete product or service they're doing to see exactly like basically whether or not it's legal. And if it's not legal, how do we make it legal?
Just another very simple example. We represent a large, and they want to purchase homes in the United States and Florida. So traditionally, the way that cash transaction would occur is you would wire money from, let's say, Brazil to the United States. So you would normally pay a fee of about 3%. So now a way to reduce those transaction costs is to pay cryptocurrency. So there are a cluster of regulations that surround the real estate industry, the mortgage services industry, just like the healthcare industry and other these new technologies into the existing regulations. So what this real estate developer was able to do is basically get those fees down to 1% for a Bitcoin transaction, and we get involved to make sure everything's done.
And have you done
in a
anything in
compliant way.
healthcare? In blockchain or healthcare?
I've not done anything specifically healthcare related, though I know that there are a lot of really good uses for blockchain. Like just a basic one that I've heard that I think is a great idea is just keeping your medical records on a blockchain. That way you can access them anywhere in the world. Imagine if you're traveling in some underdeveloped country